Hello everyone, we are Group 7. Group member are Hikaru Ishihara, Tomoka Kendai, Suzuka Tsuji, and me, Erina Juin. First, I will talk about introduction. Today, many students are forced to conduct lessons in a different format because of the epidemic of the new coronavirus infection. In this situation, students need to conduct more effective self-study. At that time, we think that more effective self-learning will be possible by fully understanding one's cognitive characteristic in consideration of cognitive characteristics. Previous study has shown that the use of cognitive characteristics for elementary school students had a beneficial learning effect more than children who did not use cognitive characteristics. However, this experiment is a study in which a lesson is given to children so that the children can understand and measure the academic ability by a test. Therefore, the relationship between children's cognitive characteristics and comprehension has been studied, and in conclusion, the two relationships were correlated. We will use the experiment to examine whether it can be applied to the memory of university students and examine whether the relationship between cognitive characteristics and memory is corrected. First, cognitive characteristics is the way to understand, organize, memorize, and express information from the outside world by Honda. Cognitive characteristics can be broadly classified into three types: visual type, linguistic type, and hearing type. Visual types are good at processing visual information. Linguistic types are good at processing information from letters, and hearing types are good at processing hearing information. We will investigate the relationship between cognitive characteristics and memory in university students by having students memorize in three types of memorization method using the Honda's cognitive characteristic test and conduction experiment on memorization ability. Next speaker is Tomoka Kendai. She will talk about memorization mechanism.
Thank you, Elena. I'm Tomoka Kendai. I'm going to explain about brain's mechanism when we memorize something. Humans receive external information from sensory organs such as eyes and ears and perform perceptual processing in the brain. In detail, the obtained information is processed in each area that control each sense in the cerebral neocortex. Here, the memory mechanism is illustrated using visual information as an example. Visual information is received by eyes and processed in an area in the back of the head of the brain. The processed information is temporarily stored in cells called the hippocampus in the limbic system. This is called short-term memory, which disappears in a short period of time. The important one of the stored information is sent to the nerve cells around the hippocampus and retained for several days. This nerve cell is called the memory circuit, and this process is called middle-term memory. After that, the information is sent to the cerebral neocortex again, is stored as long-term memory. The information is stored in various forms such as images, sounds, and languages, depending on the area of the cerebral neocortex. Then, the function of the prefrontal cortex allows the memory to be retrieved when it is needed. According to Honda, the more actively the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex work, the easier it is to remember and recall things. Also, she said that the hippocampus in visual superior's brain is sensitive to visual stimuli, so memories are likely to remain as images. In other words, it can be said that depending on the cognitive characteristics, the best ways to obtain and remember the information are different. Next, Suzuka will explain about the method of experiments we conducted.
Thank you, Tomoka. Hello, I'm Suzuka Tsuji. Now, I will talk about the method of experiment. We conducted the experiment on 8 university students. First, we made them take a test we made. The test content is to remember historical person who is not famous. There are 3 types of tests: visual, linguistic, and hearing. The test was done in Zoom. There were 6 questions in each test, and the time limit was 5 minutes each. We checked which type was best remembered. First, I will explain the visual type test. We showed a picture of historical person. We gave an oral explanation of each person. The explanation was given twice. 5 minutes later, we got an explanation of the historical person on the line. Second, I will explain linguistic type test. We asked the student to read the text summarizing the historical person and memorize it. Only in this case, it is possible to take notes and remember while looking at the notes. After 5 minutes, we showed only the historical person's name, so we asked students to send the explanation on the line. At this time, they couldn't see the notes. Third, I will talk about the hearing type test. We asked them to remember just by listening to the person's explanation. The explanation was given twice. Taking notes were prohibited, but it is possible to repeat. After 5 minutes, we showed only the historical person's name, so we asked them to send the explanation on the line. Next, we made them take the Honda cognitive test. There are also 3 types of tests: visual, linguistic, and hearing. We checked which type had the highest proportion. Then, we analyzed the relationship between the 2 tests. Then, I will talk about the result. Result of the experiment: the Honda cognitive test and memory didn't show strong correlation. Table 1 is the result of cognitive characteristic and the experiment. Figure 1 is the relationship between cognitive characteristic and the experimental result. The correlation between Honda's cognitive characteristic and experimental result was obtained for each of visual, linguistic, and hearing. Then, the decision correlation was obtained. The visual decision correlation is 0.007. The linguistic decision correlation is 0.4086. The hearing decision correlation is 0.3319. However, linguistic and hearing are included 2 outliers, so we can be expected to have low correlation. The definition of decision correlation is having little correlation when decision correlation is 0.0 to 0.2. Having somewhat correlation when 0.2 to 0.4. Having a slight correlation when 0.4 to 0.7. And having a strong correlation when 0.7 to 1.0. Therefore, you can see visual has little correlation, linguistic and hearing had somewhat correlation. Next, Hikaru will talk about discussion and conclusion.
Thank you, Suzuka. I'm Hikaru Ishihara. I would like to talk about discussion and conclusion. The reason may be the lack of explanation. We think that the very small number of a subject is the main reason why the correlation was not obtained. First, I would like to talk about visual type. We think that the reason for the lack of correlation in the visual sense is that not only the information from the eyes, but also the information from the ears were taken in this experiment. In addition, since they did not see the word, there were many answered with incorrect kanji, and it is clear that they were not remembered in association with the picture. Next, I would like to talk about linguistic type. Since there were two outliners in the linguistic, the coefficient of determination had a slight correlation with 0.4086 when they were excluded. In the experimental method, we conducted a test that stimulated only the linguistic sense, so it is considered that there was a result that there were correlation compared with the visual sense. However, because there were few subjects, there were more outliners than the denominator. We think that a coefficient of determination closer to 1 can be obtained if more subjects perform it. Next, I would like to talk about hearing type. Since there were two outliners in the hearing sense, the coefficient of determination has a slight correlation with 0.3319 when they were excluded. With regard to hearing, it is considered that there were no deficiencies in the text conducted in the same way as the linguistic, because only information from the ear was given. However, since the number of subjects is small, the ratio of outliners to the denominator is high, and the coefficient of determination is also low. The short-time memory was used in this experiment. Short-time memory is primarily stored in the hippocampus in the brain as explained by the mechanism. This is hippocampus. On the other hand, comprehension pulls out the long-time memory retained in the temporal lobe to the prefrontal cortex. That seems to be useful. After that, it is the work of combining multiple memories and repeating listening and judgment. This is temporal lobe, and this is prefrontal cortex. What we were studying in previous studies is cognitive characteristics is comprehension. Since the mechanisms are different, we think that the result may differ even in comprehension and memory. As a result, it was not possible to obtain a correlation between memory ability and Honda cognitive trait test. However, because some students obtained correlation data, even though there were a flaw in experimental method, it cannot be said that there is no relationship between memory and Honda's cognitive characteristics test. Also, this time there was no big difference because we conducted an experiment with a small number of questions. But it is considered that there is a big difference because the amount of information that studies run in learning is very large. Therefore, it is worthwhile to make effective use of this Honda's cognitive test and study hard. contains a reference. Thank you for listening.